Poster in the back says that I'm an actor and a performer, player, which means actor. Not a hoa hoa gong. I thought of doing a theater piece. I wanted to talk about it and talk about a few other things that led up to the inspiration that I got. First of all, I was born in 1990. I am the year of the horse, the fire horse. I'm 24 this year. So it's the fire horse again, by the way. And I believe the people who were born in 1990 were the last generation to really grow up for the first 3 to 4 years of their life without any internet. In 1994, the year my sister was born, the internet came, and I have been addicted since. And it's changed very rapidly as I was growing up. I have an arts background. My mother was a art major in college, and we grew up dancing in the living room, pushing the furniture against the walls and turning off all the lights. My father was a music writer and a singer, and he has a certain passion about what he does that inspired me growing up. It got me thinking with my childhood what arts were for. I never really put one and one together. I imagined that everyone grew up running around frolicking in the dark with their mother and their sister while their dad was outside singing to a bunch of people on a stage. And there I am screaming at the TV, "Why is Daddy so small?" But as I got older, the world became smaller. This happened less and less. At first it was just, oh, I can see Daddy on TV, or I can hear him on the radio. I was starting to hear, things from around the world. It used to be just laser discs. And then it was DVDs, well, VCDs first, and then it just got cassettes. That was a bit before us, but still.
Tell you a story.
I've ruined a couple tapes of my childhood. But the other day, I was on this website called Reddit. And I think it's a thing we all are pretty familiar with. And I've only, until that point, used Reddit as a means of entertainment and, I guess, a form of lazy 21st century doodling. Well, 22nd, I guess, I don't know. It's not even productive. The only thing that gives you any sense of participation is you choose your interests that you want to read about. And you can feel very sophisticated if you read world news and theater and then the occasional funny picture. You forgive yourself, you cut a lot of corners. But one day, I saw an article, and it was off of a page. He got a TV in the garage, he would sit her there, and he'd work on the car. And this went on for a couple months. Until finally, they started talking to each other. And they started becoming friends. And in some way, he filled the gap of a parent that the little girl didn't have. Which is very sad if you think about it. They started to have this relationship where she would come home excitedly to his garage, home, and throw on the big old dirty jersey that he would give her, and they would work on his car together. There are stories about, that he tells very, very detailedly in his passage about how he would explain why an antique is better than a new model, and why this antique means so much to him, and why fixing it will give him so much satisfaction. At one point she cuts her hand and starts bleeding, but doesn't cry. And he says, "Aren't you gonna cry? Doesn't that hurt?" And he cleans it off for her. She says, "Look, now my hands are gonna be beat up like yours." This story doesn't have a happy ending. After a few more weeks, the father and the mother finally finalized the divorce. At which point the mother decided she was going to move. She would have custody rights because she's the mother. And if the father wanted him, he'd have to fight for it. She decided to take her daughter with her and move, which means the separation of this friendship. The two of them were pulled apart, and the young man, very lost with the feelings that he's experiencing with a very unique kind of relationship that it doesn't happen in our world today, with all the kind of association and protection and senses of fear of the stranger that we have embedded in us, which really limits our availability to each other. But he went to this website which is, I believe, purely for entertainment, and left this message, this story of his experience. And the way the people responded gave me goosebumps. They started taking his his prose, his words, and using them as lyrics, and writing very amateur songs. But they were heartfelt songs. They took poems. They wrote poems off of his story. 4 lines, simple, crude poetry. Not fine art, but using art to reach him, to share the sympathy, to help him get better. And so why can't we do that anymore? Well, it's because we have a bit of a perversion of art. We have, and part of the problem is we have a really weird Western way of looking at the world. In the West, we have to see everything with an abstract meaning behind the word art. How do you define art? Well, I'm Chinese, so I'm lucky. I can say art is very simple. It's a human thing. It's the human spirit. It's us creating the way we were built to create, the way that we're built to procreate. It's us expressing ourselves with us, pure and simple. We use different ways. We use visual art, we use writing, we use music, we use dance, we use theater, but it's still always been human. You can't have inhuman art. There's a very famous, not a very famous writer, there's a Canadian journalist who came out with a book this year called The End of Absence. And it talks about how technology, through its convenience, has carried on our pre-internet days, the values that we had from before the internet. Sorry, let me rephrase that. And the things that really stuck was our insatiability for knowledge. We always want to find more. And when it's so readily available, when the second you have a question, it's answered before you even know you want the answer, you start to lose the sense of importance of things. Maybe being ignorant for a while isn't a bad thing. You don't see people sitting at the bus stop anymore and just waiting for the bus. And waiting for the bus. And looking at the trees and, oh shit, there's my bus. Oh, I guess I'll wait for another bus. Instead, you have people who are watching TV shows on the MRT, swaying with every move. And then you have people talking on the phone as they're walking, while they're shopping. Why didn't that person just go shopping with you? And then you have people who are driving you home in the cab ride, but they're watching the news, albeit only when there's a red light. Sure. And then I want to bring it back to Asia, because I'm from Asia. We're lucky. Again, we're lucky because of our cultural tradition. Because the West has only been here for a short while and we've taken a lot from them, but at the same time, we stick to ourselves. We have guns and they work and we like them and we stick to them. But it doesn't mean that we don't like the new models. Doesn't mean we don't like the flash. Doesn't mean we don't like the glare. Doesn't mean we don't like the formulas that have been given to us. Because in the West, things boil down. They come down to simple laws of logic that work for us. Because on some level, they make sense and it works. But it's sometimes inhuman. In the East, when you walk around the corner and go into a little alley, you'll find a temple sitting there. And the awnings are decorated of dragons and phoenixes, and there's carvings on the pillars, and there's paintings in the murals, and there's a story to tell in every single scratch and stroke and pigment of paint on that piece of architecture. And it's art, and it's human, and it's yours. It may be the first time you're in this neighborhood, but it's yours. It belongs to you. You may be from a different country, but it's yours. And that comes to the perversion of art again. We copyright things. We put ownership on things. Putting ownership on art is putting ownership on the human spirit, on the human experience. It's monetizing the value of an individual. When the minute a piece of work is created, like a human being born into the world, they are a part of the conscience. There is a time when they didn't exist, there's a time when they are here, and there's a time when they are gone. So, silence. I wanted this to be a bit of a conversation. And I realized I took it to a rant. But Kurt Vonnegut said, and I quote, "Practicing any form of art, poorly or well, is a way to make your soul grow." It's in there somewhere. So your soul grow. For heaven's sake, sing in the shower, dance to the radio, tell a story, write a poem to a friend, even a bad one. Just do the best you possibly can. And you will get something really great in return. You would have created something. Thank you.